Close your eyes. Imagine a place where history breaks. It is not a happy place. It is the Balkan Peninsula in the early 90s. The sun seems to struggle to pierce through the smoke and the grayness of the brutalist concrete. There, in the middle of the disintegration of what was once Yugoslavia, a web of shadows began to weave. A web that years later, the FBI and Interpol would call the Pink Panthers. But before the diamonds, before the expensive suits in Zurich, and before the high-speed escapes through the French Riviera, there was cold. There was necessity. And above all, there was a discipline forged in chaos. To understand the Pink Panthers, we must not look at the luxury shop windows of Bond Street in London. We must look back, towards the besieged cities of Serbia and Montenegro. Cities like Belgrade or Cetinje, where a generation of young men saw their future evaporate amidst economic sanctions and ethnic conflicts. Imagine these men. They are tall, athletic, intelligent. Many of them did not want to be criminals. They wanted to be engineers, architects, Olympic athletes. But the world they knew collapsed. The factories closed. The universities became recruiters for war. Money was worth nothing to survive. The only option was the black market, smuggling gasoline, tobacco, basic foods. There they learned the first lessons. Lessons they would later apply to jewelry robbery. They learned logistics. They learned to move unseen across borders that changed every day. They learned to trust only their own, their clan, their code of silence. The war was their university, and smuggling was their first job. They were developing lethal skills, but the goal was not to kill. The goal was to thrive in the midst of ruin. While the West enjoyed the boom of the 90s, in this corner of Europe, an invisible army was brewing. An army that would soon cross those borders to collect a debt they felt the world owed them. Take a deep breath. Let this cold and gray atmosphere envelop you. There is no danger here, only history, only the story of how ambition begins when nothing else is left. Listen to the distant wind in the empty concrete streets. They were born there. We continue in the Balkan Peninsula. The air is still cold. The international economic sanctions against Slobodan Milosevic's Yugoslavia had strangled the country. Imagine the scene. Long lines to get bread. Hospitals without medicine. A broken state where the police and organized crime often wore the same uniform. In this environment, surviving required more than just cunning. It required structure. The future Pink Panthers were not common petty criminals. They were perfectionists. Necessity forced them to organize like a military logistics company. Every move had to be calculated. There was no room for error because the consequences of being caught by rival militias or by the state police were not prison, but death. The structure they created in these formative years was horizontal. There was no single godfather or supreme leader in the style of Italian mafia movies. It was a network of independent cells, connected by trust and common origin. If one cell fell, the rest of the network remained intact, safe and operational. This decentralization would years later become Interpol's nightmare. How do you stop an organization that has no head? The men who formed these cells shared common characteristics. They were ex-military, members of special forces, or elite athletes who had been left without a team. They possessed a discipline of iron. They knew how to handle extreme stress and, most importantly, they knew how to follow a plan to the letter. They learned to study the maps of European cities with the same precision with which a general studies the battlefield. They learned the art of surveillance, of infiltration, and of the quick exit. The goal was always the same: enter, take what is valuable, and disappear before the enemy. In this case, the jewelry security realized what was happening while you sleep. Imagine this network spreading silently through Europe, like invisible roots under the earth. They make no noise. They do not seek violence. They only seek opportunity. They are waiting, perfecting their techniques, preparing for the moment when the fog of war dissipates, and they can come out into the light of the most expensive shop windows in the world. The plan is already in motion. Feel the security of an organization that does not make mistakes. Everything is under control. Now, imagine a change of focus. We are no longer looking at the environment, but at the men, at the individuals. The grainy image shows a group of young men. Their faces are serious, their bodies tense. You can see the discipline in the way they move. This is a key point to understand the future success of the Pink Panthers, especially for an audience used to organized crime stories based on raw violence. This gang was different. It was a cerebral gang. The war in the Balkans was atrocious, but it was also a training ground. Many of the first members of the network went through elite military units, such as the Red Berets of Serbia. There, they did not only learn to handle weapons, they learned things much more useful for a white-collar jewelry thief. They learned controlled demolitions, how to cut steel structures without making noise, how to disable communication systems, how to drive vehicles at high speed under maximum pressure, and most importantly, they learned to plan an operation with meticulous redundancy. If plan A failed, there was a plan B, C, and D ready to be executed instantly. This military mentality eliminated the ego. There was no room for individual improvisation or vanity. The mission was the only thing that mattered. The mission and the safety of the team. An Interpol official would years later describe their modus operandi as a military special forces operation disguised as a jewelry robbery. And he was right. The precision of their strikes, timed to the second, was something never seen before in the civilian crime world. Imagine the level of emotional control, standing in front of millions of dollars in diamonds, with alarms that could activate at any moment, and keeping your heart rate low, working with steady hands, following the stopwatch in your mind. That coldness is not learned on the street. It is learned on the battlefield. These men knew that fear is useful if it is controlled, but fatal if it is allowed to dominate you. They were trained not to feel the fear of the beginner. They were trained to execute. Sleep now with the peace of mind that you are listening to the story of professionals. There is no chaos here, only a perfect execution of a plan. A discipline that would soon be applied not to destroy, but to take possession of the most precious stones in the world. Rest. The team knows exactly what they are doing. We reach a moment of relative calm. The war is over. It is the end of the 90s. The dust from the conflicts in the former Yugoslavia begins to settle, but the economic ruin remains. The soldiers return home. But what home? Their uniforms are worn and their medals are useless for buying food. It is at this moment when the smuggling network and the military cells merge into something new, something more ambitious. The local economy is dead, but a few hours away. In Western Europe, luxury shines with an offensive intensity for those who have nothing. Zurich, London, Paris, Dubai, cities that seem like different planets. There, a single watch in a shop window is worth more than the annual budget of a family in Montenegro. The decision was logical, almost inevitable. They had the skills, they had the structure, they had the discipline. They had contacts throughout Europe thanks to the Balkan diaspora. They only needed a target worthy of their talents. They decided not to dedicate themselves to drug trafficking, which brought too much attention, violence and long prison sentences. They decided not to dedicate themselves to bank robberies, which were complicated and the loot was often traceable, or in cash that was difficult to launder. They chose diamonds. Diamonds are small, light, easy to hide and transport across borders. They have a universal value that does not depend on a country's economy. And most importantly, there is a massive and sophisticated black market for these stones that operates in the shadows, away from government regulations. The transition was subtle at first. Small robberies to test their systems and their distribution network. Luxury watch robberies. Small shops. They were tuning the instrument, making sure the logistics from the robbery in a European capital to the fence in Antwerp or Tel Aviv worked without friction. Imagine these men in this transition phase. They no longer wear military uniforms, but well-cut suits. They have learned manners. They study languages. They mingle with the European high class in the lobbies of five-star hotels. They are chameleons. They are polite. They are attractive. And no one suspects that beneath that facade hides the discipline of a military commando. The world of crime was about to change, and no one saw it coming. A new kind of predator had entered the ecosystem. Sleep with the calm of knowing that this transition has already occurred. The testing phase is over. The real game is about to begin, and it will be fascinating. Now, imagine the change of scenery. There is no more gray concrete or winter wind. We are in the heart of global luxury Bond Street in London. It is May 2003. The spring sun shines on the polished windows of the most prestigious jewelry stores in the world. Among all of them, one stands out: Graf Diamonds. Known for having the largest and purest diamonds, it is a fortress of glass and steel, protected by armed security guards, closed-circuit cameras and alarm systems that seem impenetrable. Towards this fortress, two men head. They wear expensive suits. They look like successful businessmen. They move with confidence, without haste, as if the street belonged to them. One of them is Serbian. The other is Montenegrin. They are members of the network we have seen forming. There are no long guns visible, no screaming, no panic. They enter the Graf jewelry store as if they were going to buy the most expensive engagement ring of their lives. The staff assists them with the reverence owed to extreme wealth. They ask to see the most exclusive pieces. And then, in a matter of seconds, reality changed. One of them pulls out a gun, a .357 Magnum, but he doesn't use it. He doesn't fire. He just shows it. It is a tool for controlling the situation, a part of the plan to immobilize the will of the staff. Their movements are fast, precise, almost choreographed. The other man jumps over the counter with a small and heavy mallet. He smashes the reinforced glass displays. The sound is sharp, dry, like the crack of a whip, but there is no chaos. The man who breaks the glass knows exactly where to hit so as not to injure himself and to extract the jewels in the shortest possible time. In less than 3 minutes, they take diamonds and jewelry valued at more than 7 million British pounds, more than $10 million. It was the largest jewelry robbery in UK history up to that point. And in the same way they entered, they left. They disappeared into London traffic without a subtle trace. The world of crime and the British police were in shock. No one had ever seen an operation so fast, so clean and so bold. They were not criminals, they were artists of robbery. While you sleep, imagine this scene in slow motion. The cold beauty of the diamonds passing, from the light of the window to the darkness of a bag in seconds. The plan was executed perfectly. Sleep peacefully. The first act has been a resounding success. Everything is under control. We continue with the immediate aftermath of the robbery at Graf Diamonds. The British police, Scotland Yard, were under immense pressure. A robbery of that magnitude in the heart of London was a slap in the face of the authorities. The investigation was massive.
But the thieves were ghosts.
There were no fingerprints. Security camera footage showed men with subtle disguises, wigs and light makeup that made identification impossible. The network of independent cells had worked. No one in London knew who they were or where they came from. However, in a stroke of luck, or perhaps persistence, the police managed to arrest one of the suspects a few days later in a safe house, and another at Heathrow Airport. But the loot, the $10 million in diamonds, did not appear. During the search of the safe house, a Scotland Yard detective was examining a jar of face cream that belonged to the girlfriend of one of the suspects. The cream looked suspicious. Something didn't fit. Sinking his finger into the cream, he felt something hard. It was a diamond from Graf Diamonds, valued at £500,000. It was hidden inside the face cream. This detail, this ingenious and peculiar hiding place, ignited a spark in the mind of one of Scotland Yard's press officers. It immediately reminded him of a scene from the classic 1963 film, The Pink Panther, starring Peter Sellers as Inspector Clouseau. In that film, the jewelry thief, nicknamed the Phantom, also hides a diamond in an unusual place. The press officer mentioned this connection to journalists. And so, in a moment of journalistic genius, the legend was born. The next day, all the headlines in the UK and soon throughout the world did not speak of Serbian thieves. They spoke of the Pink Panthers. The Pink Panthers. The name was perfect. It evoked sophistication, intelligence, a certain elegance in crime, and above all, a sense of humor that distinguished them from the usual brutal gangs. The members of the network themselves liked the name. It gave them an identity, a global brand. They had entered Graf as ghosts and had come out with a name that would haunt them forever, a name that would turn them into legends and into the most wanted criminals on the planet. The myth had been born. Sleep now with this image in your mind, the soft glow of a diamond emerging from a face cream, a mixture of military audacity and cinematic humor. The story has truly begun. The myth of the Pink Panthers is already part of the world. Rest. Everything is fine. Success in London was not the end. It was only the prologue. After the hit on Graf Diamonds, the Pink Panther network understood that the world was much smaller than it seemed. They had the method, they had the men, and now they had the legend. But to survive the attention of Interpol, they had to become invisible. They were not a gang. They were a system. Imagine this system as a constellation. Each star is an independent cell of 3 or 4 people. They do not know each other. They do not share phone numbers. The only thing they share is the origin and the discipline. While one of them has breakfast in a cafe in Saint-Tropez, another is studying train schedule in Tokyo, and a third is renting a safe house. In the center of Rome, logistics became their religion. They no longer robbed out of immediate necessity, but with the precision of a multinational, they began to use what analysts call the Balkan diaspora. In every major European city, there was someone who spoke their language, someone who could rent a car without asking questions, someone who could provide an impeccable false identity. This infrastructure allowed them to operate with astonishing speed. They could plan a robbery in Geneva from an office in Belgrade, execute it in 3 minutes, and, before the police closed the city's borders, the jewels were already on their way to a workshop in the Balkans to be dismantled and recut. Breathe. Feel the scale of this operation. There are no borders for them, only destinations. The map of Europe fills with invisible lines that converge in the brightest shop windows. The network grows in silence, feeding on the complacency of a security system that still sees them as common criminals. But you know they are much more. They are engineers of chaos. Listen to the sound of stamps in passports. Each one is a new city, a new target,
A new shadow.
Rest in the vastness of this all-encompassing network. How do you hold an army of shadows together? The answer is blood loyalty. In the hills of Montenegro and in the peripheral neighborhoods of Belgrade, recruitment was not done in the underworld. It was done in the most intimate circles of trust. Brothers, cousins, childhood friends who had survived the bombings together. For a young man in the Balkans in the early 2000s, the Pink Panthers were not villains. They were heroic figures who brought wealth to a region forgotten by progress. Entering the network was like being accepted into an elite brotherhood. But the rules were clear. If you fall alone. Silence is the only currency that buys your family's safety. It is said that in cities like Cetinje, children did not dream of being soccer players, but of having the cold blood of the men who returned from Europe with luxury cars and watches. That cost more than a house. But it wasn't just money. It was the pride of being better than the system that had marginalized them. The network invested in its members. They paid for language courses. They taught them to dress with elegance, to recognize the purity of a diamond at a glance, and to drive like professional pilots. They turned them into citizens of the world, capable of passing unnoticed in an art auction in Monaco or in a casino in Macau. This social base made them almost indestructible. The police could catch an executor, but they could never reach the organizer, because the executor would rather spend 10 years in a foreign prison than betray the code of his home. Trust is a shield stronger than any armor. Imagine that loyalty, an invisible thread that connects a cold cell in a European prison with a mother who receives an envelope with money in a mountain village. Everything is in order. The families are taken care of. The code is maintained. The network is strong because its base is love and debt. Sleep with the certainty that in this world of shadows, a man's word is still his most sacred law. For the Pink Panthers, the robbery began weeks before touching glass. It began with observation. But they were not hooded thieves in an alley. They were tourists, businessmen or couples in love strolling through the most expensive streets in the world. They learned that the best way to hide is in plain sight. They stayed in the best hotels, dined in Michelin-starred restaurants, and wore designer clothes. If you look like a millionaire, security staff treats you like one. They open doors for you. They smile at you. They let you observe the details that a common thief would never see. They studied the cameras, but not just their position, but their blind spots. They timed how long it took for the nearest patrol to arrive at different times of the day. They analyzed the thickness of the glass and the type of lock on the windows. Everything was noted. Everything was discussed in quiet meetings over a glass of expensive wine. They used disguise as an art, not just wigs or sunglasses. They used prosthetics, professional makeup, and sometimes disguises so bold they were ridiculous, but effective. In a robbery in Saint-Tropez, they dressed in bright flowered shirts, looking like clueless tourists, only to later escape in a motorboat before the astonished gaze of vacationers. They were social chameleons. They understood human psychology. They knew that people tend to remember what catches their attention and to forget what is familiar to them. That is why their robberies were fast and theatrical. The brains of the witnesses froze at the audacity of what they were seeing. Imagine this house of mirrors. An elegant man walks towards a jewelry store. He adjusts his tie. His breathing is steady. He knows that in his pocket he carries a precision mallet and that on the corner, a driver who has memorized every curve of the city is waiting for him. No nerves, just the execution of a perfect script. The world is their stage and they're the best actors. Rest while the plan is set in motion. Everything is an illusion, and you are the only one who knows the truth behind the mask. Let's travel now to the French Riviera, to Saint-Tropez, the place where the world's money meets the blue of the Mediterranean. It is a hot summer day. The streets are full of celebrities and tourists. Security is high, but it is relaxed by the holiday atmosphere. A group of men walks towards one of the most exclusive jewelry stores in the port. They wear bright flowered shirts, shorts and straw hats. They look like the stereotype of the tourist who has drunk too much sun. But under those shirts, the muscles are of a soldier. They enter the store. In less than 2 minutes, they have emptied the displays of the most expensive watches. There are no unnecessary shouts, just the speed of expert hands. They leave the store with the same calm with which they entered, walk towards the pier, and get onto a powerful motorboat that awaits them with the engine running, while the local police try to make their way through the narrow streets, congested with luxury cars. They are already cutting through the waves at 50 knots, moving away towards the horizon. It was a masterstroke of logistics. They used the city's geographical weakness to their advantage. But the most incredible detail of this period was not the motorboat. It was what they did in another nearby robbery, where they painted a public bench, fresh in front of them, jewelry store they were going to rob. Why? So that no one would sit there during the morning and could observe their movements in detail before the hit. They even put up a fresh paint sign. People walked past, avoiding the bench, and they had a clear field of vision for their final surveillance. That is the level of the Pink Panthers. Small, almost invisible details that make the difference between success and capture. They don't just think about the robbery. They think about the comfort of the witnesses so that they don't look where they shouldn't. Feel the sea breeze on your face. Listen to the engine of the motorboat moving away, leaving behind the chaos and the brightness of the port. They are gone. Once again, they have disappeared before the world understood that the show had ended. The sea is calm now. Sleep with that gentle swaying. The operation has been perfect. The robbery is only half the job. The real magic happens in the escape. The Pink Panthers' elevated escape, driving to an art form. They did not seek high-speed cinematic chases if they could avoid them. They preferred technical precision and deep knowledge of the terrain. Their drivers were men who could navigate through the streets of Paris or the tunnels of Monaco blindfolded. They used high-end cars, often stolen weeks before and equipped with false plates that changed in seconds. But their favorite trick was simplicity. Sometimes After a $1 million robbery, they drove only 3 blocks to an underground parking lot. There, they changed the luxury car for a gray, boring and common utility vehicle, while the police looked for a black Audi at full speed. They left the parking lot in a small utility vehicle, respecting all traffic lights and speed limits, mingling with the rush hour traffic. They understood that speed makes you visible, but normality makes you invisible. On other occasions, they used dirt bikes to escape through parks, stairs, or pedestrian tunnels where police cars could not enter. They were agile, they were fast, and above all, they were unpredictable. Each escape route was rehearsed several times before the robbery. They knew exactly how many seconds they had before the first city closure. Protocol was activated. This phase of the operation is where military discipline shone most. The driver was not an accomplice. He was a central pillar. His calm determines the success of everyone. Imagine being at the wheel, with millions of dollars in the back seat, seeing the police lights in the distance, and keeping your foot soft on the accelerator, maintaining the exact speed so as not to draw attention. That is true cold blood, the ability to control the instinct to flee to survive. Breathe with that calm. Imagine you are in the back seat, seeing how the city lights slowly pass through the window. You are safe. The driver knows the way. The sound of the siren fades into the distance. You are merging with the night. Rest. The escape has concluded. For the final act of this block, we must travel to the other side of the world, to Ginza, the most luxurious district of Tokyo, Japan. It is March 2004. Japan is a country where crime of this type is almost non-existent. Jewelry stores have security measures, but they rely on social harmony and an extremely efficient police force. The Pink Panthers saw this not as a barrier, but as an invitation. 2 men enter the Ginza Tanaka jewelry store. They do not carry firearms. They do not need them. They carry pepper sprays to immobilize the staff and a mallet. In less than 30 seconds, they break the display and take the Comtesse de Vendôme, a unique diamond necklace with 116 stones, valued at more than $30 million. It was the most expensive robbery in Japanese history, but the most incredible thing was the escape. They left the store, got on bicycles, and pedaled quietly through the streets of Ginza, among the crowd of pedestrians. No one suspected 2 men on bicycles in a city where everyone uses bicycles. They headed to a nearby place, changed clothes, and in a matter of hours, they were already on a plane leaving the country. The diamonds were never recovered. The Japanese police, famous for their pride and efficiency, were devastated. They had been humiliated by a simplicity they did not know how to foresee. This robbery in Tokyo marked the zenith of their expansion. They were no longer just a European gang. They were a global threat, capable of striking on any continent and disappearing before the authorities could react. The name of the Pink Panthers was no longer just a press headline. It was a priority for Interpol in 190 countries. Imagine the rain falling on the neon lights of Tokyo, the rhythmic sound of bicycle pedals moving away through an alley, the shine of the most expensive necklace in the world kept in a common backpack. There is no violence, only a terrifying efficiency. Sleep now with this image. The network has reached its highest point. The whole world is watching them, but no one can see them. You have traveled the ascent. You have seen the audacity, and you have felt the calm under pressure. Everything is silent. The rain continues to fall, erasing the tracks of the ghosts who have just stolen the sky. Rest. The story will continue, but now The silence is yours. Take a deep breath. Imagine the heat of the desert. But it is not a suffocating heat. It is the dry and electric heat of an April night in Dubai, year 2007. Dubai is not just a city. It is a symbol of the impossible. A place where money has built palm-shaped islands and buildings that touch the clouds. In the center of this oasis of opulence is the Wafi Mall, a shopping mall designed as an ode to ancient Egypt, with glass pyramids and statues of pharaohs that guard the most absolute luxury. Inside the Wafi Mall, the air conditioning is cold and perfect. Silence is expensive. The corridors smell of $1,000 perfumes and new leather. On the ground floor is the Graf jewelry store. Yes, the same firm they assaulted in London years ago. The Pink Panthers have returned to choose their favorite prey. But this time, the plan is not to walk in. This time, the plan is to break the very reality of Dubai. Imagine the members of the network in the days before. They are not nervous. They moved through 7-star hotels as if they were part of the furniture. They have studied every inch of the mall. They know that security is total. Latest generation cameras, elite guards, infrared motion sensors for any other criminal. The Wafi Mall is a tomb. For the Pink Panthers, it is simply a stage that requires a more dramatic entrance. While the city sleeps, they are awake in a discreet warehouse on the outskirts. 2 white Audi A8 cars shine under fluorescent lights. They are powerful, heavy machines, prepared for something more than speed. Feel the calm before the storm, the contrast between the peace of the desert and the mechanical precision that is about to be unleashed. Everything is ready. The watches are synchronized. The history of crime is about to change forever, and you have a front row seat. Rest in this wait. Enjoy the stillness of the desert. The plan is in motion. It is 10 at night. The Wafi Mall still has life, but most of the buyers have already retired. The lighting is dim, elegant. Suddenly, the sound of the desert breaks. 2 white Audis appear on the horizon of the main avenue. They are not speeding. They move with a coordination that seems choreographed by a computer. They maintain the same distance, the same direction. There are 2 white metal ghosts sliding over the black asphalt. Inside the vehicles, there is no music, only the sound of the quiet breathing of men who have done this 1,000 times in their minds. They wear dark clothes, gloves and simple masks. They do not need elaborate disguises this time. Speed and impact will be their best camouflage. Dubai is a city of cameras, but the Pink Panthers know that seeing something is not the same as stopping it. They have calculated that they have exactly less than 3 minutes before the police response can close in on them. Every second has been weighed and measured as if it were a diamond. The cars approach the main entrance of the Wafi Mall. The glass pyramids reflect their headlights. The security guards see the vehicles approaching, and for a second, they think they are VIP clients arriving late. There are no alarm signals. There are no shouts. Just the constant hum of the German engines gaining revolutions imperceptibly. Imagine the tension in your own shoulders, but let it go. You are an invisible observer. Feel the inertia of the car, the stability, the force. You are inside that precision machine. The target is in front of you. The Graf jewelry store shines at the end of the main corridor, protected by a huge reinforced glass window. The driver of the first Audi adjusts his grip on the steering wheel. There is no doubt in his eyes. Only the mission. 3, 2, 1, time. stops for an instant before the glass stops, being a barrier. Sleep with the confidence of technical precision. Everything is going to happen exactly as it was planned. The first white Audi smashes through the main window of the Wafi Mall as if it were paper. The sound is not a sharp explosion. It is a deep roar of metal and glass colliding. The car enters the marble corridor, skidding with a terrifying elegance, and stops right in front of the Graf jewelry store. A second later, the second Audi enters through the same hole, positioning itself at an angle to cover the escape. It is an unreal image. Two luxury cars in the middle of a marble shopping mall. Under the statues of pharaohs, 8 men get out of the cars. They move like a single organism. There are no shouted orders, no confusion. Each one knows exactly which display case to break, which shelf to empty. Take out your stopwatches. Time starts now. They use heavy mallets to smash the window. The security glass, designed to withstand repeated blows, yields to the precise technique of the Pink Panthers. They know where to hit, the exact angle so that the glass disintegrates without resistance. While the mall alarms begin to howl, a sound that is lost in the immensity of the space. They collect the jewels. They don't take everything, only the best, only the purest diamonds, the watches that are worth fortunes. The bags are filled with a value of $15 million in less than 90 seconds. The few witnesses in the mall are paralyzed. It is not fear they feel, it is awe. It looks like a scene from a Hollywood movie recorded in real life. The coldness of the thieves is hypnotic. One of them, even, takes the time to pick up a stone that has fallen to the floor, with a deliberate calm that defies the police who are already on their way. Imagine the shine of those diamonds under the emergency lights. The contrast between the chaos of the robbery and the discipline of the men. The mall's air conditioning continues to blow, trying uselessly to cool the heat of the Audi engines. Everything is fast. Everything is perfect. Time is running out, but they have total control. Breathe with them. The hardest part is over. Now the escape begins. The men return to the cars. The velvet bags, loaded with the loot, are thrown into the back seats. The audacious roar, turn around on the marble stained with glass, and leave through the same hole they entered, leaving behind a trail of tire smoke. The Dubai police, known for their super luxury patrol cars, are only minutes away, but the Pink Panthers have studied the escape routes with almost sickly obsession. They do not try to leave via the main highways where cameras can follow them easily. They head to a deserted industrial zone, a few kilometers from the mall. There, the plan enters its disappearance phase. They get out of the Audis in a matter of seconds. They spray the interior of the vehicles with accelerant and set them on fire. Why burn 2 such expensive cars? Because fire erases every trace of DNA, every fingerprint, every fiber of clothing that can connect the men to the machine. The cars burn under the desert stars, becoming skeletons of black metal, while the flames consume the evidence. The men get into other common vehicles, utility cars that don't attract anyone's attention, and separate. They split in different directions, merging with the night. By the time the first investigation teams reach the burning cars, the Pink Panthers are already safe. Some head to the airport with impeccable false passports. Others hide in safe houses in the city, waiting for the pressure to decrease. The loot, the $15 million in diamonds, has already begun its own journey. It does not stay in Dubai that same night. The small and shiny stones begin to move towards Europe. hidden in places that customs would never imagine. Feel the heat of the flames moving away from you. You are in one of the escape cars, moving quietly through the streets of Dubai. The pulse returns to normal. The mission has been an unprecedented success. You are invisible again. Sleep with the satisfaction of a job well done. The night protects you. The next morning, the world woke up to the security camera footage from the Wafi Mall. Television screens around the planet repeated over and over the entry of the two white orders. The video was hypnotic. The precision, the speed, the audacity. It was something the American and European public had never seen. They were not simple criminals. They were the Pink Panthers. The name born in London was now a global brand of infamy and admiration in equal parts. In Lyon, France, Interpol headquarters hummed with activity. Analysts realized they were facing an international security crisis. If they could rob in Dubai, one of the most monitored cities in the world, they could rob anywhere. A special working group dedicated exclusively to them was created. The Pink Panther Project. Police from 20 different countries began to share data, fingerprints, call records, and genetic profiles. But they faced a wall of silence. The Pink Panther network had no central base. They had no hierarchy that you could decapitate. They were like water. They adapted. They seeped through the cracks of the system and disappeared. When you tried to catch them, the Dubai robbery changed the rules of the game. Jewelry stores around the world began installing retractable bollards at their entrances and glass that could withstand the impact of a truck. But the Pink Panthers were already thinking about the next step. They were always one step ahead of the technology designed to stop them. Imagine the Interpol analysts surrounded by screens, seeing the dots on the map where the network has struck Tokyo, London, Saint-Tropez, Douai. The constellation of crimes is perfect. But for you, this story is not about the map. It is about human audacity, about discipline taken to the extreme. Breathe in the clean morning air after the robbery. The world is in shock, but you are in calm. You know the secrets. You have seen the fire and you have felt the marble under the wheels. Sleep peacefully while the world tries to understand what you have just witnessed. The legend is now bigger than reality. Where are the Dubai diamonds? That is the question that has haunted researchers for almost 2 decades. $15 million in gemstones disappeared into the desert night and have never been seen again in their original form. This is where the true sophistication of the Pink Panthers comes in. They are not just thieves. They are experts in the gem market. They know that a famous diamond is impossible to sell. Therefore, they have a network of cutters in the shadows. Men with surgical hands operating in discreet basements in the Balkans or in Antwerp. In a matter of days, the Graf diamonds were cut again. Their shape changed. Their weight changed. Their history was erased. Those stones that shone in the window of the Wafi Mall became new stones, with false certificates of authenticity, ready to be sold in the legal market of Hong Kong or New York. The money obtained is reinvested in the network. It is used to buy more loyalty, better equipment, safer identities. It is a perfect cycle, a gray economy that sustains thousands of people in the poorest regions of the former Yugoslavia. For the Pink Panthers, diamonds are not jewelry, they are freedom. They're the way to ensure that their families never go hungry again, that their children can go to university, that their land has a future, even if that future was built on the broken glass of a luxury jewelry store. At the end of this block, I want you to think about the silence of diamonds, stones that have been under the earth for millions of years, that were polished by man, stolen by audacity, and transformed again to hide their past. Close your eyes. Imagine the soft glow of one of those stones. There is no violence in it, only light. The assault on the Wafi Mall has ended. The adrenaline has dissipated. Only the mystery and the whisper of a story that seems like a legend, but is real, remains. Rest deeply. In the next block, we will see how the world began to close the net around them. But for now, success is theirs, and the dream is yours. Good night. Breathe. Feel the change in the air. We are no longer in the Dubai desert or the luxury of Tokyo. We are in Lyon, France, in a glass and steel building that never sleeps, the headquarters of Interpol. Here in a windowless office, the Pink Panther project was born. Imagine the walls covered with faces, hundreds of grainy, black and white photographs of men and women from Serbia, Montenegro, Croatia, faces that seem common but hide military minds. Intelligence analysts have stopped seeing isolated robberies. Now they see the pattern. They see them, invisible threads connecting. A jewelry store in Switzerland with a village in the Balkan mountains. The silence in this room is absolute. Only the hum of servers processing terabytes of information is heard. Intercepted phone calls, hotel records, car rentals, transactions in the Antwerp black market. Interpol has convinced 16 countries to share their deepest secrets about the gang. It is a war of patience. The agents know the Pink Panthers are perfect in execution, but human in their daily lives. They have families, they have lovers, they have weaknesses. The hunt is no longer about catching them at the shop window, but about waiting for them in the shadow of their own routine. Close your eyes and imagine the map of the world lighting up with small red dots. Each dot is a sighting, a clue, a heat trail. The eye of lion is open and does not blink. You are safe in this control room, watching how the net of justice begins to weave its own spider web. Rest. Vigilance is constant, but you only have to listen. Feel the calm of those who wait for the right moment. The time of the Pink Panthers as ghosts is coming to an end. Technology is the silent enemy of the Pink Panthers. For years, their best weapon was cleanliness. They left no fingerprints. They used gloves. They burned their cars. But the world of forensic science advanced faster than their precautions. Imagine a laboratory. The light is white, pure, almost divine. A scientist examines a small piece of cloth found in a burned car in Dubai, or an almost invisible drop of sweat on a jewelry counter in Geneva. That minimal trace is the invisible witness that cannot be bribed or intimidated. DNA. In the 90s, DNA was a slow tool. Now, it is an indelible signature. Interpol began to cross-reference the genetic profiles of Balkan criminals with crime scenes across Europe. Suddenly, the ghosts began to have names and surnames. They were no longer the Pink Panther, they were Dragon.
They were Nabodza.
They were Milan. Science was stripping them of their myth, turning them back into flesh and blood, men who could be tracked by their own biology. Even a cigarette butt extinguished 3 blocks from a robbery became incriminating evidence. The diamond safety net was no longer just glass and steel. It was a microscopic network of genetic data. Feel the coldness of this laboratory. It is a clinical, necessary piece. The Pink Panthers thought they could burn their trail, But they didn't know they left their essence in every move. Sleep with the idea that everything leaves a trace. That order always finds a way to restore itself. Science is working while you rest. It is a slow, inevitable process, like the growth of the crystals they love so much. Rest in the precision of justice. The first major crack occurred in Monaco. The principality is small, but it has more security cameras per square meter than almost anywhere else on Earth. In 2004, a man named Dragan Mikic, considered one of the gang's operational brains, was arrested after a daring robbery. But the story did not end in the cell. It ended in an escape that seems written for the cinema. Mikic escaped from a maximum security prison in France using a rope ladder, while his accomplices fired assault rifles at the guard towers. It was a reminder that although we were hunting them, they remained dangerous and highly trained. However, that escape was the beginning of the end of their anonymity. Interpol put his face in every airport, on every border. The luxury life they enjoyed on the French Riviera became a life of basements and cheap hotel rooms. They could no longer trust anyone outside their most intimate circle. The stress of being hunted began to take its toll. Imagine what it is like to live knowing that every time someone knocks on your door, it could be the police tactical team. That every time you look out the window, you could be seeing an undercover agent. Diamond money cannot buy peace of mind. They began to make mistakes, small oversights, a call from a phone believed to be secure, a meeting in a Belgrade cafe with someone who was already under surveillance. Listen to the sound of the water drop. It is constant. It is the time running out. The first circle of trust has broken, and water is starting to enter the boat. Feel the tension of those who flee, but let that tension stay there, outside your room. You are in the place of those who observe, of those who know the end is only a matter of time. Rest in the echo of this mystery that begins to resolve itself. The hunt was not only police-led, it was economic. Interpol and intelligence agencies began to track the money trail. Diamonds stolen in Tokyo or London were not sold for their real value. On the black market, a $10 million jewel is sold for a fraction of its price. That money has to return home, to Montenegro or Serbia. But how do you move millions of euros without attracting the attention of international banks? They began to monitor real estate investments in the Balkans. Luxury apartment buildings appearing in small towns, nightclubs, hotels on the coast. The Pink Panthers were trying to launder their loot in brick and cement. They turned their precious stones into buildings, thinking that concrete would be safer. But the police also learned to read buildings. They followed shell companies, offshore accounts, and connections with local politicians. The siege was total. They were taking away their refuge, their ability to enjoy the loot. Imagine a man sitting in his luxury villa, surrounded by marble and gold, but unable to go out into the street because his face is wanted by Interpol. Money becomes a cage. The diamonds that were once a symbol of freedom are now the weight that sinks them. Feel the heaviness of that gold, the coldness of that marble. It is not a wealth that gives peace. It is a wealth that generates insomnia. But for you, it is only a story, a lesson about the consequences of limitless ambition. The air in your room is light. Your conscience is clear. Sleep while the financial system closes the doors to those who thought they could bypass it forever. Every trace is followed. Every flow returns to its origin. Imagine you are at an international airport. It's late. There are few travelers. You see a well-dressed man with an expensive leather suitcase. He moves with the security of a diplomat, but his eyes do not stop scanning the room. He looks for cameras. He looks for uniforms. He looks for glances that last a second too long. This is the daily life of a Pink Panther during the Great Hunt. Airports became psychological battlefields. They used up to 5 different passports in a single trip. They flew from Belgrade to Istanbul, from Istanbul to Madrid, from Madrid to Mexico City, all to erase their trail. But Interpol had installed state-of-the-art facial recognition software. The wig didn't matter. The sunglasses or the makeup didn't matter. The bone structure of the face, the distance between the eyes, the way of walking. All of that is a fingerprint that cannot be changed. The man with the leather suitcase sits in front of the glass. He sees the rain hitting the glass. He knows that, somewhere in that airport, there is a team waiting for the moment to confirm his identity. He knows that the next step he takes could be the last one in freedom. Feel that loneliness? The loneliness of the one who has no home because the whole world is a trap. The murmur of the airport is a comforting sound for you, a sound of trips and vacations. But for him, it is the sound of the net closing. Let that murmur lull you. You don't have to flee from anyone. Your identity is secure. Your destination is rest. You are seeing the scene from a distance, feeling the melancholy of a life consumed in constant flight. The rain on the glass is relaxing. The world keeps turning and you are safe in your center. Rest. The shadows dissolve when sleep arrives. For the end of this block, the hunt returns to where it all began, to the mountains of Montenegro, to the streets of Belgrade. International pressure forced local governments to truly collaborate. It was no longer safe to hide at home. Raids began to happen at dawn. The sound of tactical boots on the pavement, glass breaking by local special forces. One by one, important names began to fall. Not in spectacular robberies, but in their beds, having breakfast with their children, or driving to the gym. The network was crumbling not because of a great epic confrontation, but because of exhaustion. Many of the original members were already in prisons in Switzerland, France, or Japan. Others had disappeared, possibly murdered by their own partners for fear they would talk to the police. The Pink Panther brand still existed, but the elite, the founders, the men who brought military discipline to jewelry robbery, were being erased from the map. The hunt has been a technical success, but it has left a void. The world wonders, is this the end of the Pink Panthers? Or are they simply mutating into something harder to detect? The answer is not in Interpol's files, but in the darkness that remains after the police lights go out. Close your eyes. Imagine the silence that remains in those mountains after the storm. The hunt has ended for today. You have seen how intelligence and science have cornered the bold. Feel the satisfaction of resolution, of the peace that comes after justice. Your breathing is slow and deep. You are entering sleep, where there are no pursuers or pursued, only the calm of a well-told story. In the next block, we will see the final decline and how the myth turned into ashes. But now, only silence exists. Good night. Listen to the silence of the cafe. We are in a forgotten corner of Belgrade. There are no more plans for glory in Dubai, no more laughter after the London hit. The men who remain look at each other out of the corner of their eyes. The air is thick with suspicion. The Pink Panthers' greatest strength, their blind trust in brothers in arms, has begun to rust. When Interpol closed the borders and froze the accounts, money stopped flowing with the same joy. And when money is missing, loyalty becomes a luxury that few can afford. Imagine a veteran of the network, someone who was in the 2003 assault. Now he sits alone. His face is no longer that of a young soldier, but that of a man who knows his name is in a global database. Every time someone enters through the cafe door, his hand tightens. Is it a friend? Is it an undercover agent? Or is it a colleague who has decided to sell his head to save his own? Paranoia is a slow poison. It doesn't kill suddenly, but it destroys the ability to act. The cells began to stop communicating. The codes that were previously sacred began to be ignored. It was no longer about being the best. It was about not being the next to fall. Feel that weight in your chest. The weight of knowing that the world you built is crumbling from within. No alarm sounding here, just the subtle sound of a glass touching wood. Honor among thieves is a nice phrase for movies, but in real life, fear is stronger than nostalgia. Breathe in that thick and calm atmosphere. You are safe. You are an observer at the next table. Time has stopped for these men, while the rest of the world moves forward. Sleep with the idea that even the boldest empires end in a dark corner, waiting for a signal that will never come. The success of the Pink Panthers created a monster, the imitators. By the mid-2010s, the name Pink Panther had become too famous. Gangs of young people in the Balkans, who had not lived through the war or had the military discipline of the founders, began using the name to gain respect. But they were not professionals. They were reckless. They began using violence gratuitously. They began shooting in jewelry stores, injuring security guards and civilians. What was previously a clean, white-collar operation became chaos and blood. The brand that the founders had taken so much care of was being dragged through the mud. For the veterans, these young people were a disaster. They attracted too much attention. They made the police more aggressive, and judges impose harsher sentences. The true Panthers saw how their legacy of criminal elegance disappeared under the impulsiveness of a generation seeking fast fame on social media, not the silence of diamonds. Imagine the frustration of the masters seeing the apprentices break all the rules. It is as if a perfect orchestra was replaced by white noise. This change marked the end of the sympathy that some sectors of the public felt for them. They were no longer the Robin Hoods of diamonds. They were simply dangerous criminals. The mystique broke, and without mystique, only the coldness of the law remains. Let that noise fade away. Return to the silence of your room. The chaos of the imitators is far away. You are on the side of the story that appreciates precision. Feel how the energy of the story drops in intensity, becoming more intimate. Sadder, the show has ended and what remains is not pleasant. Sleep while the shadows of the new criminals are lost in the night. Rain in Switzerland is different. It is a rain that seems to wash away sin, but in reality only hides it. In 2011, one of the key pieces of the organization decided to talk. He didn't do it out of remorse, he did it for survival. We will call him the informant. Imagine this man in an interrogation room in Zurich. Outside, the rain hits the glass with a hypnotic rhythm. Inside, he is breaking the code of silence that kept the network alive for 2 decades. He gave names, he gave addresses of safe houses in Belgrade. He explained how the network of fences in Antwerp worked. He told how diamonds were hidden in cream jars and in the double bottoms of corrupt diplomat suitcases. Each of his words was a nail in the Pink Panthers' coffin. Why did he do it? Because the network was no longer a family. The informant realized that he had been left alone in a moment of need. Military discipline had become every man for himself. The European police couldn't believe it. They had the complete map before them, the instruction manual for the ghosts. From that moment on, they were no longer playing guessing games. They knew who to look for even before the robbery was committed. Feel the cold of that betrayal. It is a cold that seeps into your bones more than the Geneva rain. The silence following a confession is the heaviest of all. The informant leaves the room with a new identity, but with the shadow of death following him forever. You, however, are in a warm place. The rain you hear is just a lullaby for sleeping. You have no secrets to keep, no friends to betray. Let the sound of the water clean your thoughts. The network is unraveling, thread by thread, and you are seeing how it happens from the safety of your rest. Year 2013, Lausanne, Switzerland. A group of 3 men prepares for what they believe will be a routine hit. They have studied the jewelry store. They have the escape vehicle. They have the stopwatch ready. But what they don't know is that the police are waiting for them inside. Thanks to the leaked information, special Swiss police units had set a perfect mousetrap. They didn't just monitor the shop, they monitored the hotel where they stayed, the car they rented, and even the cafe where they had breakfast. When the thieves broke the glass, they didn't meet frightened employees. They met submachine gun barrels and stun grenades. The assault lasted barely 10 seconds, but not to rob, but to stop them. For the first time in years, the Pink Panthers had no escape. There was no escape by motorboat. There was no car change in a parking lot. Only the metallic sound of handcuffs closing over wrists. That night, in the Lausanne police station, the myth of invincibility finally died. Photos of the detainees, tired, with their faces uncovered and their gazes lost, went around the world. They were no longer the action heroes of the Dubai security cameras. They were middle-aged men with families they wouldn't see for years, trapped in a system that had finally learned to play their game. Listen to the radio static. Imagine the blue lights flashing against the walls of old buildings. It is the end of the act. The adrenaline has transformed into a quiet resignation. Breathe slowly. The tension of the capture dissolves in your mind. You are not trapped. You are free in your sleep. Feel how the energy of the story becomes flat, almost monotonous. The climax has passed, and now only the resolution remains. Rest in the certainty that order has returned, and chaos has been contained. Look at that image. Old, tired hands. The hands that once cut diamonds with surgical precision can barely hold a cigarette now. The original Pink Panthers are aging. Many have spent the last decade in high-security prisons in different European countries. Isolation, lack of sunlight, and constant stress have taken a toll on their bodies. Others, those who avoided jail, live a life of shadows that is not glamorous at all. They cannot use their real name. They cannot return to their villages in Montenegro for fear of being turned in or murdered. They live in rented apartments in grey cities, looking out the window every time a car brakes sharply. The loot. Where is the loot? Much was lost in lawyers, in bribes, in supporting families during the fugitive years. The diamonds have vanished, and what remains is a pittance of a pension on the black market. There is a deep sadness in this decline. It is the story of men who thought they could beat time and the system. But time is the only judge that doesn't accept bribes. They sit in public parks, watching the young people pass, wondering if it was worth it. If the 3 minutes of glory in the Wafi Mall justify 20 years of loneliness, feel that melancholy. It is a soft feeling, like an old blanket. It's not pain, it's just tiredness. The tiredness of a life lived at a speed that the human heart cannot withstand forever. Let that feeling lull you. You don't have to run. You don't have to hide. Your life is quiet. Your future is rest. You are seeing the end of a long and dusty road. Sleep with the peace of those who have nothing to hide. The weight of years is light for you. And so, the network vanished. There was no epic final battle. There was no official announcement of dissolution. Simply, the phone stopped ringing. The cells stopped sending each other encrypted messages. The Pink Panther network became a ghost of what it was. Today, Interpol still has their files open, but they know that the organization as such no longer exists. Individuals remain. Small bands using the name remain. But the spirit, the military discipline, the non-harm ethics, the global logistics has been lost. The diamonds they stole are now on the necks of people who have no idea of their history. They have been cut, polished, and sold over and over again, becoming anonymous stones in a world of legal luxury. The story of the Pink Panthers is now a warning and a myth, a story told in whispers in Belgrade bars and at criminology conferences in Lyon. It is the tale of how a generation marked by war tried to steal from the world what history had taken from them, and how the world, in the end, always takes back what is its own. Close your eyes definitively. Feel how the story dissolves into the silence of your room. There are no more escape cars. There are no more broken glasses. Only your breath remains, rhythmic and quiet. You have traveled the ascent, the climax and the decline. You are on the shore of sleep. The water is calm. The darkness is protective and warm. Tomorrow we will see the legacy they left, but for now, your only mission is to rest. So the mystery stays here, in the shadows. Show while you lose yourself in the light of rest. Good night. Breathe very slowly. The story is reaching its port, after decades of robberies, hunts, and captures. A question remains floating in the air like dust in a sunbeam. Where is the money? It is estimated that the Pink Panthers stole more than $500 million in jewels, an astronomical figure that could buy entire kingdoms. But if you look at the lives of those who were captured, you don't see mansions in the Caribbean or luxury yachts. Many died in poverty or live on the bare minimum in forgotten cities. So, where did that river of diamonds end up? Some theories say the money was never for them. They say the Pink Panthers were only the executing hand of a much larger and darker organization. A network of former intelligence services and warlords who used the talent of these men to finance political agendas in the shadows of the Yugoslav post-war. The loot was not spent on champagne. It was spent on power. Other urban legends speak of safety deposits in banks that no longer exist, or diamonds buried in the hills of Montenegro, waiting for someone who no longer has the key to return for them. It is the myth of the pirate's treasure, adapted to the 21st century. But perhaps the truth is simpler and sadder. Perhaps the money was diluted in logistics, in bribes, in constant travel, and in the high cost of living like a ghost. Diamonds are eternal, but the wealth they generate is volatile. It slips through the fingers like sand in the Dubai desert. Feel the calm of that empty safe. There is nothing to look for anymore. The treasure is now just a story, a curiosity for Interpol analysts. You don't need that gold. You have the wealth of tranquility. Let the tick-tock of the clock lull you. Time has claimed its part of the loot and has left nothing behind. Rest in the void of ambition. Look at the world around you. Next time you pass a luxury jewelry store in New York, London, or Paris, notice the details. Those steel bollards rising from the ground. The glass that looks thin but can withstand the impact of a 10-kilo sledgehammer. The dense fog systems that activate in seconds to blind an intruder. All of that is the indirect legacy of the Pink Panthers. They forced the world of luxury to wake up from its dream of invulnerability. They changed the architecture of our commercial cities. They turned shop windows into bunkers disguised as elegance. The private security industry grew billions of dollars trying to anticipate their next move. Artificial intelligence algorithms were created to detect suspicious behavior in shopping centers. Tracking satellites and border closure protocols were improved. The Pink Panthers were the masters who unintentionally taught the police how to be smarter. It was an arms race of wit. And although the gang no longer operates as before, the defenses built to stop them are still there. Silent, protecting gemstones that you only need to see to appreciate. But you don't have to worry about security. Your refuge is your mind. Your bunker is your room. There is nothing here to steal because everything you possess at this moment is peace. Feel the solidity of the walls surrounding you, the softness of the sheets. You are protected by silence. Sleep knowing the world is under surveillance, but you are off the radar. Free and quiet. Rest in the stillness of what is already safe. The name Pink Panthers no longer belongs to the police. It belongs to modern mythology. Books have been written, documentaries filmed, and television series produced attempting to capture the essence of these men. The American and European public feels strangely fascinated by them. Why? Perhaps because they represent the last vestige of a type of criminal that no longer exists. An analog criminal in a digital world. Men who used paper maps, who drove real cars, and who put their bodies in the place of risk. In an era of cyber attacks and invisible scams over the internet, the Pink Panthers have the romantic aura of ancient pirates or Old West outlaws. We are fascinated by their discipline, their refusal to use unnecessary violence, and their ability to outsmart the powerful with tools as simple as a mallet or a jar of face cream. We see them as characters from a movie that stepped out of the screen to walk our streets. But behind the myth, we know there are real people with broken stories. Fascination is only a veil, a way to process the all-human audacity produces when it deviates from the marked path. Listen to the whisper of the wind. It is the sound of legends fading. Cinema and television try to catch the smoke, but smoke always escapes. You have the real version, the story of the men born from the cold who wanted to conquer the sun's shine. Feel how the interest in details fades. It no longer matters who robbed what. Only the rhythm of the story taking you towards sleep matters. The myth is kept in a drawer. The film set lights have gone out. You are in the comforting darkness of reality, where nothing happens and everything is fine. Sleep with the serenity of one who knows the difference between legend and life. Today, if you travel through the Balkans, you may cross paths with one of them without knowing it. It could be the man serving you a coffee on a terrace in Budva, or the taxi driver who knows all the shortcuts in Belgrade. They lead a life of absolute silence. The network code remains alive in their closed mouths. They do not talk about diamonds. They do not talk about Dubai for their neighbors. They are men who worked abroad for a few years and returned with enough money to live with discretion. The Pink Panther diaspora has integrated back into normalcy. That silence is their final victory. The police could never break the community's loyalty. In their native lands, they are still protected by a wall of respect and complicity. They are the sons who went to war and returned with invisible scars and crystal secrets. This final calm is necessary to close the circle. Every great storm ends in a puddle of stagnant water reflecting the sky. The frantic energy of the robberies has turned into the inertia of a quiet old age. Imagine that peace. The sun sets behind the mountains of Montenegro. The Adriatic Sea is calm. There are no sirens, no helicopters, no plans. Only the sound of waves and the aroma of Turkish coffee. That is the true end of the story. The return to the simple, to the small, to what really matters. Breathe in that peace. Let the silence of the old thieves be your own silence. There is nothing more to say, nothing more to explain. Words run out and only the feeling of conclusion remains. Everything is in its place. The cycle has closed. Sleep in the immensity of this shared silence. Everything is forgiven by time. Close your eyes almost completely. Imagine you are lying in the grass on a clear night, in the mountains of the Balkans. Above, the sky is a black mantle dotted with thousands of natural diamonds. The stars, unlike the stones the Pink Panthers stole, these jewels cannot be touched, cannot be sold, and cannot be hidden. They are there for everyone, constant and eternal. The Pink Panther story teaches us something about our own nature, about the desire to shine, to stand out, to escape a gray destiny. But it also teaches us that the most intense shine is the one that consumes the candle fastest. Audacity has a price, and often that price is peace. Now that you know the whole trajectory, the origin in war, the global ascent, the climax in the desert, and the decline in the shadows, you can see the complete picture. It is a story of beauty and loss, of precision and chaos. Feel the immensity of space above you. You are small, but you are safe. You don't need to steal the world's shine because you are already part of it. Your inner light is quiet, constant, like a distant star. Feel the night's freshness on your skin, but your blanket's warmth protects you. The earth beneath your body is solid and ancient. It sustains you, as it has sustained all generations of men and women, heroes and villains, who have passed through it. Let this perspective relax you. Your problems are tiny against the sky's eternity. Sleep with that humility, with that lightness of spirit. Everything is right in the universe. Rest in the harmony of the spheres. We reach the last minute of our story. It's time to let go of all images, all names and all places. London, Tokyo, Dubai. Now they're just words the wind carries away. Imagine a single diamond, the perfect diamond. It is pure, transparent, and captures all the light in the room. Look at it fixedly in your mind. See how it turns slowly, showing 1,000 different facets. But as you look at it, the diamond begins to soften. Its edges become blurred. Its light becomes dimmer and warmer. It is no longer a hard and cold stone. It is a cloud of light, a cloud that envelops you, that makes you feel light, that invites you to float. The diamond dissolves in your breath. With each exhalation, you feel heavier in bed and lighter in mind. The Pink Panthers no longer exist in this space. Only you exist, and the rest you have earned. You have heard a story of effort and ambition. And now is the time for the reward, the sweet oblivion of sleep. There is nothing to remember. There is nothing to plan for tomorrow. Your life's script now has a blank page, ready to be written after a deep and restorative rest. Feel how your muscles surrender totally, from your toes to your forehead. Your mind is as clean and clear as the purest crystal. The sound of my voice is fading away, becoming a murmur that blends with the night's silence. The journey has ended. The mystery has been told. The night is yours and yours alone. Sleep deeply. Dream of soft lights and quiet paths. The diamond's echo fades. Silence is absolute. The story has ended. Good night. Good night. Good night.